Hi, I'm Dr. Maya Shetreat, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about the solar eclipse that just happened on solstice at 0 degrees Cancer. And I want to talk a little bit about what it means for us, especially in the context of current events in the world. So we just came out of this last of a series of eclipses that were happening on the Cancer Capricorn axis. And this one happened kind of magically on summer solstice, which is the day the sun is shining the longest and the brightest of the whole year. And that sun was blocked in our vision of it briefly by a new moon that was at 0 degrees Cancer. And this was the last of a cycle over the last couple of years of eclipses that were happening in the Cancer Capricorn axis. So first of all, I want to just say a few words about what eclipses are. And a solar eclipse, in this case, is basically a supercharged new moon. So it's new moon energy with rocket fuel. And it's not so simple to work with that energy because it's chaos energy, right? And so the amazing thing about eclipses is that they kind of alter everything we think about time and space, meaning you get your new beginnings, right? You get your new moon, new beginning, planting the seeds in all these important ways. But because of that eclipse energy, it happens often, the new beginnings you get could be a little more chaotic or more dramatic or even more shocking. And that will happen rather than you having this stepwise way where you plan things out and you have deadlines and there's this cause and effect that you would get with your typical new moon. Now, right now we have Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn, and Saturn actually rules Capricorn. So it's this very Saturnine time. And I want to talk for a minute about what Saturn represents for us and how being in that collective energy might feel. So Saturn represents limitations. It's the rigid, the rules, stark truths. It's isolation. It's the extreme. It's a father energy. It's right and wrong. It's old and cold and dry and even dead. Saturn is our structures, our gravitas, weightiness, solidity, stability. It's also repression and what we have repressed. It's what we gain through tension and resistance. And it's darkness and heaviness. And in some ways, it's what we need to shed, okay? And what's interesting is that while Saturn is structure and our governmental structures and our medical structures and all these things that are set in stone, it's also alienation and a sense of being separate from those structures. There's a real paradox in the way that, in what Saturn represents. And that's how these archetypes like Saturn are so poetic, because just like humans and just like life, they're not simple, they're complex and they're nuanced, and they really allow us to see truths about ourselves and the world through them. So Saturn is all of the experts who are telling us how to operate, our government officials, our medical experts, those who make policies. And the interesting thing is that what we're being told right now are all very Saturnine things like quarantine and masks and gloves and social distancing, right? Things that are restricting us, that are causing us to feel alienated and isolated. And we're seeing this play out around us because I think right now we're really looking at what we know and how we operate and things that are tried and true, whether it be germ theory, whether it be how our government operates and this push and pull around all these things that what we've learned in school about our history and, you know, the governmental sort of leaders, our historical leaders that we've honored. And at the same time, for many people, really recognizing and confronting that these very leaders and this very structure is alienating and oppressing, particularly for a group of people, for the Black community. So we have our structure, our history, our gravitas, things we've honored, at the same time creating this sense of alienation and showing us, in a sense, what's brittle, what's old, what needs to be perhaps torn down for a new and more beautiful and just system to be born. And what we're seeing, you know, throughout these protests and demonstrations is literally the tearing down of statues of our prior leaders, of our historical leaders, which is incredibly relevant to what we're seeing in the astrology of this time. Now here comes along this eclipse, this solar eclipse, which brings to light these issues, which is explosive, right? And it's the last of these eclipses on the axis of Capricorn Cancer at 0 degrees Cancer on the summer solstice. It's the new beginning of all new beginnings. So it's very high powered, very, very activating. And so we just talked about the Saturn ruled sign, the Capricorn aspect of this, because Saturn rules Capricorn and there are all these planets there. But this eclipse was opposing Capricorn. It was in Cancer. And Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so, and what's interesting is the moon is naturally the planetary contrary of Saturn, because, and as is the sun, okay? Because Saturn represents darkness and the moon and the sun are considered luminaries. They are representing light. The sun is the source of light and the moon is reflects that light. So let's talk about the moon who rules Cancer. What does she represent for us? She's our body. She's our soul. She's our feelings. She's our emotional life. The moon is mother. The moon is goddess. She's our compassion. She's that deep embrace. She's togetherness, to nurture and to be nurtured, to need and to care. The moon is also our potential. She's constantly moving. She's fluid. So what does this all mean for us right now? Okay, because here we are in this lunar, in this kind of lunar energy, right? In opposition to Saturn energy. Well, first of all, the first thing is that we may feel a real sense of alienation from things that are lunar, right? Because we're in this opposition of Moon and Saturn. So I think many of us are feeling this energy of alienation at every level, right? Alienation from our own bodies. We don't trust our own bodies to keep us healthy. And I'm going to make another video about this. An alienation and a sense of not trusting our extended families, right? Like who's with who and are they doing the right things? And, you know, they're going to expect me to do this, or, you know, how are we going to do Thanksgiving together if they're going to go do those things and I don't trust that they're going to take care of things the appropriate way. So there's this real sense of alienation around extended families. We have a sense of alienation with our communities where we can't come together, right? We can't be in our communities, you know, whether it be, you know, how we worship, or how, you know, how we exercise, or, you know, just how we come together, parades or being in the park or all these kinds of things. We're alienated even from the land we're on. All these parks are closed. The beaches are closed in many places, so we can't even go to be with nature, okay? And so a lot of things that we love about the gifts of the moon, the nurturing, the communal sense, that compassionate energy is very shut down and limited by this Saturnine energy. And we're coming up against each other in all these ways, whether it's related to conversations about politics or about COVID and quarantine and masks or racism. There's this sense of, you know, really being catapulted out of our compassion and being up against each other, right? So Saturn is all of these experts and structures and systems and, you know, kind of telling us what to do, in direct opposition to the moon, to our sense of body and health and well-being, you know, and compassion. The second thing that I want to talk about is what we can learn from the paradox of the Moon Saturn opposition, right? So we know that Saturn and the Moon are opposite. But what's interesting is that um, just as Saturn is both structure and tradition and alienation and being the loner and feeling apart from structure and tradition at the same time, the moon too is always transitioning to the next phase, right? So it goes from bright to dark, and back to bright again and lighting everything else up. So the moon and Saturn can both be dark. There's a coming together of opposites. And right now, when it feels like we're totally separate and apart from each other physically, but also in our beliefs, right? I mean, I have heard the word idiot more times in the past couple months than I have heard ever, right? You're an idiot if you like Trump, and you're an idiot if you don't like Trump, or you're a moron if you wear a mask, or you're a moron if you don't wear a mask. This sense of being in such polarity and such extreme separation, if we look to the moon and Saturn to teach us, the moon is actually going to these periods of darkness, right? And Saturn and the moon then can both be dark at the same time. They come together even though they're in opposition, because the moon is always in a cycle. And that's what she teaches us, is that we're always learning and evolving to the next stage, and then unlearning as we return to the beginning again, going from bright to dark to bright. And just keeping in mind that, this polarity is part of a cycle. It's a swing of the pendulum, that we're always changing in our beliefs. I've seen a lot of memes on social media lately saying it's okay to change your mind, right? That's okay to say, I've learned something and now I see things differently than I did before. That's okay. We don't have to dig in our heels. We're evolving all the time. And we can go from feeling like we were enlightened and wise back to being in the dark again and feeling isolated and literally not knowing what the fuck we're doing, which is kind of where we are right now. Okay? Is anyone right now who says they know the truth, especially if it's at the expense of their compassion, is likely to have some of those ideas smashed to bits in some way, somehow, because it's absolutely untenable to stay at this level of polarity. Okay? And we're going to go into the darkness. We're in the darkness. And then we're going to move through that, gain wisdom, gain knowledge, gain compassion, perhaps even gain enlightenment. Okay? And go into that place of knowing. So Saturn and the moon and the way they cycle together and apart, that's, I think, a really beautiful lesson for us. And when we add in this eclipse, especially in concert with solstice, this flux of the moon to me also means that we can trust that what's true will reveal itself, because that's the nature of truth, and that this eclipse kind of, with this blocking the sun, right? A solar eclipse where the moon is blocking the sun and there's a ring of fire around the moon as it's in darkness. The light of the truth will always reveal itself. And it doesn't always happen on the timeline we'd like to see it, right? Because we're working to bring light to certain things, certain situations. But the truth will reveal itself. Just be prepared. And this is to everyone. It may not reveal exactly what you think it will reveal, right? The more you're sure that you know the truth, the more that you're sure you're right, the more you're likely to be shocked and surprised in this ecliptic energy that we have just passed through. And with the expanding light of the moon now, just know the truth eventually will be lit up and revealed to the collective. The third thing and final thing I want to say is I want to think about how can we integrate this energy between the moon and Saturn, this precarious kind of beauty between permanence and flux, between honoring the past and understanding that things always are changing and need to change. The balance between scientific knowledge and intuition, or between all knowledge and uncertainty. So that's where we are right now, is doing this dance. And you know, we want to be able to really you know, dig in somewhere and find our footing. And part of what this period of time is about is being in that uncertainty, be kind of dancing between what we know and what could be, and you know, where we have been and where we are not yet, you know, where we have not yet arrived to. But I think in this, our big lesson in a certain way is to not forget. Like, we forget very often that our lives are not really worth very much without quality of life. And that's very lunar, our quality of life, right? So we're imposing these very Saturnine, rigid ways of living right now to achieve some facade of safety and structure and perfection. And there is a sense of needing both of those. And yet, whenever we're trying to achieve perfection, it's hubris. It's doomed to fail. So part of where we are right now is learning to embrace the awareness that we're all mortal, we're all fragile, and that even with science and technology and advances, we can't solve everything, and we can't even understand everything, right? We're learning that structures can and must be built, and that they must be torn down sometimes as well, and then rebuilt again. And that we can be a part of tearing down what's old and dead, but we may not know exactly what's coming next. That's part of the cycle, part of the cycles of the moon. We can't rush. We can't rush from new moon to full moon. We can't rush through any part of the cycle. It's just, you know, we have to align with the timeline and be with that energy and allow the light to reveal itself. We can't make it happen faster than it's going to happen. And it's okay then that we don't have to know. It's okay to not know right this moment. And even in that not knowing, to know that we're still each worthy of existing, of appreciating the present moment, of finding joy, of nurturing ourselves and others, and of accepting nurturing, even in the face of monumental collective structural shifts that are happening and that will be happening. And that we don't have to sacrifice one for the other. That we need to be able to live in the present moment and honor this unknowing and this not knowing. So I think that's a really big lesson that we need to learn while we're here in Earth School. And I'm gonna be coming back with some more videos touching on some of these topics and other topics. Thank you for listening today, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more wisdom on the Earth, health, activism, and the cosmos.